you there?
He's up late to give you the news you can't get anywhere else early. He fights for truth and justice and the American way. Please welcome our pal from the Paragon Trust Company, the real Tony D. Tony D'Angelo.
All right, he's here with us, ladies and gentlemen. The real Tony D joins us each and every Tuesday to chat about the world of politics and news and things happening not only in your own backyard, but across the state and across the country as well. Tony D'Angelo 7 on the X, and of course, he's got his own YouTube page. We'll get to that in just a bit. Tony, good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Lee Elci. Good morning, everybody. I'm proud to be among you.
So you got some heavy stuff. Section 702 of the FISA you want to start with today.
Well, yeah, we're going to start with that, and we're going to bring that down to where we live. And the interesting post I was reading, Matt Taibbi this weekend about how all the people in Congress who were yelling and screaming about civil liberties caved on a number of things, one of which is Section 702, which we hear tossed around a lot. And a little bit of background. What is Section 702? Section 702 is Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. Some of this is heavy stuff, but bear with me. It was enacted in 1978 originally, created the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, and it was starting in 2008, and this would have been under the, I believe it was probably the outgoing Bush administration, to collect communications of non-Americans outside the U.S. without a warrant. And that's the key thing here, warrantless, wiretaps. Now, a point of note, there's been hundreds of thousands of warrantless searches going back, to time immemorial. And typically, there's no accountability in any of this. The government can do what it wants, when it wants, how it wants to do it on the on the cloak of keeping us safe. And generally what you get is we regret the inconvenience. See, I'm the guy sitting on the other side of the table. I don't have a whole lot of sympathy for that. This past April, a whole lot of pushing and shoving in Congress about Section 702 and the renewal, and it was renewed. It was renewed under something, the provision was called Reforming Intelligence and Securing America Act. Whenever you see an act like that, it's like the Paperwork Reduction Act in government. What does that actually mean? And what it did was that it did two things. It, first of all, caused a huge outcry. Just about anybody and everybody from all sorts of, the left, the right, the center, as to what's going on here, actually. Interesting things, different people saying the same thing. The ACLU press release, April 20th, 2024, they bring up some very good points. I mean, this is what I try to do. I try very hard to say, what's the information there? I try to get by, what uniform the person's wearing, even though I know where I sit on things. But I'm always trying to learn. Sometimes I'm successful. One of the things the ACLU points out is this particular passage, and which is true, I've been down this legislation, expands the definition of an electronic communications service provider that is, quote unquote, susceptible to service. Now, what that does is it allows the government to search, a wide range of U.S. businesses, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Suspicionless, including, for example, if you're a private businessman and you've got foreign clients, which I do in certain countries, it gives them, quote unquote, an entree to, quote unquote, search me. And this has been renewed for 2 years. The Brennan Center, very left-leaning, and one of the things they do in their particular press releases, they talk about the backdoor into all these searches is expanded law enforcement, shall we say, capability, the quote-unquote reasonable suspicion, reason to believe. And it is and like it or not, it's a domestic spying tool. They use it to perform hundreds of thousands of warrantless backdoor searches, as we've mentioned earlier. And another good release from the Electronic Privacy Information Center. Now, this one lists 4 amendments across the aisle as far as, people saying, hey, what are you doing here? Rand Paul had the Fourth Amendment is Not for Sale Act, which closes the data broker loophole, which allows law enforcement to circumvent constitutional and statutory protections by purchasing sensitive data from data brokers. We've been on this show. We know how that works, in this state and in this country. Ron Wyden and Cynthia Lummis, kind of odd bedfellows, they're concerned about the universe of U.S. businesses subject to surveillance. Richard Durbin and Kevin Kramer, odd bedfellows again, a very, tried to get a narrow warrant requirement, couldn't do it. And Mike Lee and Peter Welch had an amendment that would have strengthened the role of FISA, and it did not. So there's two things here to focus on. Under the new passage, this thing of a U.S. person involved with a foreign whatever has been expanded, and all of the service providers, tech companies, internet companies, people with your router and things like that, are all subject to, quote unquote, a warrantless search. Now, good article, New York Times, this is actually before the full passage, that explains what's really at stake here with respect to data centers. And the operative question then becomes, as one of the partners that I used to work for in New York would always say, and I hated the guy's guts, but it was a great focus that he would give you, how does this all play with a data center? I mean, it's like you could go, this thing is so broad, they wanted to drag in, coffee shops and atriums and elderly facilities and things like that on the quote-unquote unaccountable reason to believe standard. How's this all play with a data center? And that was kind of back and forth, but couple of slime balls in Congress, one well known to us, Jim Himes of Connecticut, who's the ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, and Michael Turner of Ohio. Himes makes the statement, the privacy groups, and I admire their commitment to civil liberties, but they've been suggesting that this is bringing back the Stasi, and conceited jerk. He said in an interview, what they're doing is massive exaggerating, as they've done throughout the whole thing, to generate fear. As this thing was going back and forth about data centers, they put in language that said, any other service provider who has access to equipment that's being or may be used to transmit or store wire or electronic communications, even to a dumb guy like me, that's like anybody in the universe, including but not limited to a data center. Now, we're looking at a thing with data center that, to my knowledge, I don't think anybody here in the state has looked at. Anything I've read, like in the local media, which is what really is, what's at stake here. And the thing is, if my information is in a data center, how safe do I feel? And if you look at what's happening, elsewhere in the country, a really good article. I was able to do a lot of reading on this, which I was grateful for. This would be Forbes magazine. This was April 21st. Virginia had a huge deal with data centers. Now, that's Glenn Youngkin. To me, Glenn Youngkin's a pretty sharp guy. He's a lot sharper than, King Governor Ned Lamont, the unaccountable. And he had a huge data center deal, and the lease went to TikTok. And this is like 12 pages of all of the horrors that have taken place since this thing is there. And some of the things, it's much too much to get into here. Let's see, security vulnerabilities, unmarked flash drives plugged into servers to unescorted visitors, boxes of hard drives left in hallways. And it's like it all comes down to, who is your tenant? Now, and one other quote in the article, each new story raises more concerns and provides additional examples of TikTok's appearing to misrepresent its data security practices. And this is where Mike Warner from Virginia, the senator, was saying, well, this is where you have to ban TikTok. Well, I mean, it's like, carelessness is not limited to a foreign power, unfortunately. And then you start to think about what's the liability of all of this. And the one quote in this thing, they talk about building safety, fire hazards. And, of course, you have a lot of risks with any business, but basically in this whole thing, one of the people involved said, ByteDance just didn't give a blank censored. So there's other things with regard to breaches and things. I mean, there's a liability here. That's really all I want to say. But when you get down to what does this all mean with us? What does this all mean with data centers? What is the future of data centers and all of this? If you look in Connecticut, I was going down the House Bill 6514, Public Act number 2117. They set up something, and this is the thing. Connecticut can't do anything without setting up a freaking bureaucracy and adding to the administrative state. It's unbelievable. An Office of Data Infrastructure Administration and Security within the Department of Economic and Community Development. This office shall serve as the liaison between applicants and qualified data centers and other state agencies, provide assistance to applicants, and seek to ensure coordinated, efficient, and timely responses to applicants and qualified data centers. Now, that third line kind of brought me into, some kind of terror. Here we are, Connecticut, the data breach state. And if you take this whole thing, if you take it in conjunction, what does it all mean? Well, Section 702, the way it has been, kind of slime-balled through Congress, which is now national law until 2026, it's like we have, what is to stop how could I put it? I won't mention names, but I'm sure names of people are rattling through people's heads. Some state senator, somebody in the, the food chain to say, well, we have broad surveillance powers granted to us by Congress. What stops some unsavory character to have reason to believe, information, or we want to search your data in the data center, and as far as piggybacking that is, I mean, this is something we haven't looked at. And then you have to ask yourself, what about security? What if Connecticut's involved in a TikTok situation like Virginia? I don't want to think about that personally. And I mean, again, we have another Connecticut bureaucracy. Now, I asked the DECD about this. It's like, what's the bureaucracy doing there? Why can't this just transact between people? Lee Elci, they stopped talking to me. They stopped talking to me. It's like, why do we need this? I mean, if this is a quote-unquote protection for somebody's data, I mean, is this a way to employ cronies? Is this another quote-unquote DEI experiment? I mean, if I'm storing data in good faith and I'm putting money down to do it, it's like, why is a state bureaucracy involved? And then the other thing, and I think I'm hitting most of this as I'm going down, I started to look at the future of data centers. And this, this is just me, my little business or businesses, my little pea brain. I went yesterday to my computer and I said, okay, there's one file where a lot of our information is. I mean, it's a server. It's a typical server you can, more or less get anywhere. And I said, okay, what is the size of this? How many files have we scanned and put in over the years? It's something, it was 65 megabytes or something. And I started to do a little chicken scratch math. And I said, well, if this were 1956, how many office buildings would I need to house all of these files? And of course, if you have files, back when I started, you had red welds and you had, you'd have to pull them down. You'd have to put them, now we scan through computers, but we would just sit with books and files and things. How big of an area would I need? And it was, I said it to Kathy last night, it's gargantuan. It was a 30,000 square foot facility to do all that. And I'm thinking, we're doing all of this, and this isn't even count the stuff that we have locked in vaults. So it's you don't really need a lot. And I think, I've been following the discussions that Gordon's been talking about the quantum computing. Quantum computing, in addition to other things, is going to make the, shall we say, the space needed to store data a whole lot less, largely because of data sharing. You're not going to need all the space. And I think to myself, just in my own life, my first computer didn't even have a hard drive. It was this little Data General where you had like 2 floppies, and you could keep very little on it. And then it was like, wow, we got to, we have a 80, whatever the smallest measure of unit was, and it was like, we're never going to need anything more than that. And like, to me now, that's like one file. So what I think is happening here is twofold when you look at all this. The security thing is a big issue. Somebody putting their data in the data center, especially with this revamped Section 702 and what the slime balls did in Congress, and can a state adopt that? That, to me, is one big ringing alarm bell. But the other thing is that if I'm looking at this whole thing now, and if I'm, quote-unquote, the smart money, I'm thinking to myself, why do I want to get involved with the state at all? Look at what's happening in Virginia, with TikTok. Why don't I look to things like quantum computing and other things where I don't have to get governments involved? I mean, this is something really happening. And then you think about this state, and it's like, how many construction projects have we had? Rentschler Field, the busway to nowhere, Yukon. And it's like, does a data center here, I mean, to the people that are talked about the noise and the wind and all that, yeah, I'm there. I'm with you. I agree. But I think there's even a much bigger concern, which is, as we've discussed, but is this whole thing, when it's all done, when people are going to look at it, it's like, show me the client that's going to put information there, especially in light of this new Section 702. I think it's a tiger by the tail, and this is all kind of very recent stuff. You never hear it discussed, and it's my job here that I believe that I've got to at least show you what I'm seeing, and I think that is there really a future in this stuff? And I think with Section 702 and the quantum computing possibilities, I'm not so I'm not so warm about it, notwithstanding how somebody can abuse that thanks to our friends in Congress.
So we have information out, everywhere, right? There's information. There's
yes.
Your personal information is floating around out in the ether and the internet everywhere. I mean, you've studied this. You've looked through all this stuff, and whether it's a data center or no data center, whether it's a brand new quantum computing on the horizon. I mean, how safe is our stuff as it is, Tony?
Right now, not very. And I mean, but yet, how could I put it? A government has a data breach and says, we regret the inconvenience, contact so-and-so and, life will go on. A private party has a data breach. It's, it's lawsuits. It's, making good to customers. And, so I think that if I have to look at that, I bank on the private party because they're going to do everything they can to protect themselves. I'd like to think so. I mean, we've watched corporations and businesses do some incredibly stupid things in the last 3 years, but I think, even so, I think there's a higher degree of accountability. So how safe is it? I don't think there's anything that's unbreachable, unhackable, or whatever, the case may be, but me, myself, and if I'm protecting my folks, if I'm doing what I need to do here, and I'm sure a lot of other private business people think this way. I mean, you have 3 strikes. Where are the first 2 pitches going to be right down the middle? That's kind of how I look at it. It's do everything you can to protect everything you can, knowing that it's not a perfect world, unfortunately.
I mean, I talk to people who believe that their emails are being scanned and read, and I believe it. And
there are hundreds and thousands, Lee Elci, of warrantless wiretap searches. Could have been you, could have been me. We're on this phone call. I mean, yeah, it goes on, and I mean,
well, in particular, what we do, like you're out there, other people, I'm out there, other folks who are listening are out there, and they're trying to make a difference, and there's a reason to look through their stuff. And I'm just curious, how confident are you that their stuff is secure? I'm not. So I think
I'm not terribly, and what concerns me here is that, it's not, quote unquote, Angelo is acting with a foreign adversary. It's like we may have reason to believe that Angelo is acting with a foreign adversary, and that could be no reason or at all, or that could be quote unquote, which I have had, happily, great guy, concluded business with, but my client in China last year, it's like, well, we thought he was, he had an uncle, and that's the whole thing. They could drag in whatever they want without, any accountability whatsoever. And a guy like Himes, it acts under the thing of, well, government knows best, shut up, we know what we're doing. And that's the part that really, really fries me, because there's no, it's like they can do what they want and just, well, we're doing this in the name of justice, and let's go and, how many Catholic schools can we shake up and that sort of thing. That's really the whole thing here. It's like if people had trust in government actually doing the right thing, checking the right people,
right.
That wouldn't be my concern. That wouldn't be yours. It's just like, we'd go about our lives.
Tony, I got to run. I'm out of time. Tell everybody where they can find you on YouTube.
At Tony D'Angelo 7 on Twitter.
All
and this Thursday with Tony show is your con. We'll be talking about more of this, but a little bit closer to home, even though I think we got pretty close today.
All right, brother. Thank you, Tony. Appreciate it. Tony D'Angelo, again, joining us as he does each and every Tuesday. We'll take a short break. We'll come back. Some of your phone calls next. Hang on.
I was 5 years ago, I'd take a flamethrower to this place.